Facing the harsh, unpredictable waves of the North Atlantic, icy winds slicing across the deck, and a ship so agile and dependable it seems to dance with the sea rather than fight it. That's the Viking longship. Not just a boat, not just a tool, but an extension of a people who didn't merely endure the ocean, they mastered it. These ships weren't just unsinkable in the physical sense, they were unsinkable in spirit, in purpose, and in legacy. And the wild part? They were built without blueprints, no measuring tapes, no 3D models, no design software, just generations of seafaring intuition, craftsmanship, and a relationship with nature that was almost spiritual. Now here's the thing, the longship didn't spring into existence as a stroke of genius from one mastermind in a fjord somewhere. It was the culmination of more than 6,000 years of slow, grinding progress. Trial and error passed down through oral tradition and calloused hands. Each new ship stood on the shoulders of the one before it. Every curve, every rivet, every plank had a history and a purpose. These ships evolved alongside their makers, influenced not just by engineering principles, but by the fierce personality of the Norse people and the unforgiving terrain they lived in. The coastline they dealt with was no gentle playground. It was a brutal, moody beast. Jagged fjords in Norway, sandy coves in the Shetlands, volcanic edges in Iceland. And through all of it, the Vikings adapted. The sea didn't bend to them, they bent to it. And so their ships had to be fast, yes, but also flexible. They needed to maneuver through shallow rivers, charge across open seas, and vanish as quickly as they appeared. The longship became the Swiss Army knife of naval design, lean, sleek, deadly efficient, and capable of both sudden violence and elegant escape. It could slip past icebergs without a scratch, twist through narrow inlets like a fish, and hug the curves of the coastline so tightly that it felt almost amphibious. These ships didn't just survive the sea, they read it, anticipated it, outwitted it. When storms rolled in, they could be hauled ashore before a single drop breached the deck. When enemies spotted them, it was often too late. They were already gone, leaving nothing but churned water and panic. The longship wasn't just a response to geography, it was a weapon designed by it. Now imagine a ship slicing through the waves, its hull built in a method called clinker construction. Picture overlapping wooden planks, each one angled just right to give the ship its unique strength and flexibility. These weren't slapped together with nails and hope. Craftsmen overlapped the planks, called strakes, by about 25 to 30 millimeters. That's the width of a couple of fingers. Not much, but just enough. Each plank hugged the one below it, secured by iron rivets in a rhythm that seemed almost musical. The further they moved toward the bow and stern, the closer those rivets were spaced. The ship had to flex, not fracture. And that flexibility wasn't a flaw, it was the secret weapon. Start with the keel, that long central spine that runs down the middle of the ship like a backbone. That's where the whole build begins. From there, shipbuilders added curved stems at both ends and built outward with planks that gracefully rose toward the waterline. The structure inside the ship was just as thoughtful. Ribs, floor timbers, knees, all placed in a way that gave strength without adding unnecessary weight. And weight, by the way, was everything. Vikings wanted ships that could skim the water, not plow through it. Something so light it could be dragged onto beaches or carried across land when needed. The entire framework had to feel like it was part of the ocean itself, rigid enough to hold its form, but supple enough to roll with every crest and trough. Each piece of timber was selected not just for its shape, but for its personality. How it bent, how it flexed, how it responded under pressure. No glue, no metal skeletons, just friction, iron rivets, and the wisdom of hands that had built these vessels for generations. Even the way the ribs were lashed or pegged in place reflected an understanding of how the sea would test every joint. A good build wasn't about brute force, it was about balance. Every added pound had to justify its place. And this is where the genius really kicks in. Some planks were carved from trees that had already grown in the desired curve. Imagine that, walking into a forest not just looking for trees, but for shapes, for natural bends, for branches that had fought against gravity or wind and now held the perfect angle. Builders knew how to read the grain of wood like a map. They didn't fight it. They followed it. Because the moment you force a piece of timber to do something it wasn't meant to do, it breaks. The Vikings couldn't afford that. Their lives depended on every curve holding strong. Now let's talk about the wood itself. Oak was the holy grail. Not just any oak, green oak, fresh and flexible. And it took a lot of it. Around 2,000 cubic feet for a single 65-foot ship. That's about 11 huge oak trees per vessel. And when the forest started thinning or the trees were too far from the shipyards, Vikings didn't panic. They pivoted. They turned to pine, even though it gave fewer planks per tree. It was a painstaking process, but necessity fuels innovation. Every tree became a puzzle piece, its grain, moisture, and strength evaluated before it ever touched a tool. Even the knees, the curved supports that hold the ribs and planking together, were carved from the sacred spots where branches met trunks or roots. Not because it looked cool, but because that junction was strong. Naturally curved, unbroken grain, that meant strength, that meant flexibility. That meant the difference between surviving a storm or becoming part of the seafloor. And speaking of storms, how about that hull? It wasn't just stitched together and slapped with oil. After the clinker planks were riveted into place, every seam got caulked with natural fibers, wool, hemp, or animal hair, soaked in pine tar. It sounds primitive, but it worked. Like really worked. This wasn't just a bit of waterproofing, it was armor. Evidence shows that even in the early centuries AD, small-scale tar production was already a thing. And by the time Viking-age shipbuilding hit its stride, massive tar pits were cranking out hundreds of liters at a time. The whole hull got slathered in it and left to set, forming a seal so watertight it could laugh in the face of ocean tempests. Now let's get to the real magic. What made these ships feel alive in the water? It starts with balance. The mast wasn't placed dead center. It was nudged forward just enough to add lift as the ship gained speed. The hull wasn't deep and bulbous like later European ships. It was shallow, almost flat in places, allowing the ship to skim across the surface instead of digging into it. That reduced drag and made rowing more efficient. And rowing, oh, Vikings were rowers. When the wind died or wasn't blowing in the right direction, no problem. With 13 pairs of oars, sometimes more, the crew could power the ship at 3 to 4 knots against the wind. Not fast by today's standards, but for the time, it was game-changing. Plus, the double-ended shape meant the ship could reverse direction without turning around. Try doing that in a 10th century galleon. Couldn't be done. The longship was agile, fast, and light enough to be pulled ashore, carried overland, or hidden in a narrow riverbank. This ability to vanish as quickly as it arrived made Viking raids nearly impossible to predict. Strike, vanish, move again. And when it came to trading, these ships weren't just built for war. Variants like the Nar were designed for cargo, still sleek, but with wider hulls and more storage space, perfect for carrying goods across Europe, Asia, and beyond. So while the longship gets all the cinematic glory, the entire Viking fleet was a logistical marvel, custom-tailored to every kind of seafaring mission. Let's not forget about the sail, massive, square, and stitched from thick bands of wool. Not one has survived intact, but historical accounts describe sails stretching 35 to 40 feet across, designed to catch even the subtlest breeze. And this wasn't basic fabric. It was woven using twill patterns, probably treated with animal fats or even reinforced with strips of walrus hide to hold its shape in strong winds. The mast itself sat in a wide, semicircular wooden base called the curling, anchored above the keel with massive frames and bolstered by a horizontal beam called the mast fish. The whole rig could be dropped or removed when not in use, no clunky structures sticking up like a sore thumb. Just low, lean efficiency. Every part of the ship had a purpose. Shields weren't just for battle, they lined the rails, offering protection and intimidation. Oar holes were sealed with wooden discs when not in use. No water sloshing in unexpectedly. And if there weren't dedicated oar holes, no big deal. Hooks and rope loops could hold the oars in place, Viking style. And then there's the steerboard. That's right, rudders weren't dead center at the back like in modern boats. They were mounted on the starboard side, hence the word starboard itself. These rudders were long, rounded, and had a flat side facing in. With square holes for the tiller and adjustable rope to lift or drop the blade in shallow waters, they were functional and adaptable. No wasted motion, just clever, rugged design. Ships like the Gokstad, preserved and on display today, showcase these features with stunning clarity. Built around 890 AD, the Gokstad was a beast of balance and beauty. Its design speaks to a time when survival, trade, exploration and conquest all rode the same hull. Every plank, every rivet, every smear of tar was a testament to a culture that understood the sea not just as an obstacle, but as a highway, a battleground and a muse. And that's the real heart of it. The longship wasn't just a Viking ship, it was the Viking ship. It held their hopes, their fears, their ambitions, their gods. It was how they discovered lands, built empires, and terrified the known world. Not through brute strength alone, but through ingenuity, through design born from experience, refined by nature, and executed with a kind of discipline that modern naval engineers still admire. This was the ultimate fusion of culture, nature, and craftsmanship. An unsinkable idea made real in wood, iron, wool, and tar. A floating symbol of what humans can build when they stop trying to conquer nature and start learning from it instead. Conclusion: the Vikings didn't just build ships, they sculpted legends. And those longships? They still whisper across the seas. Thanks for watching. If this exploration into ancient shipbuilding left you awestruck, hit that like button and share it with someone who geeks out on history. Subscribe for more deep dives into the brilliance of ancient civilizations, and drop a comment about which part of Viking engineering blew your mind the most. Until next time, may your seas be calm and your sails full.